The opinions expressed are those of the host. The material is for informational purposes only. It does not constitute investment advice, and it is not intended as an endorsement for any specific investment. Visit crestmontpw.com for more details.
This is Sam McGee with the Ascent, brought to you by Crestmont Private Wealth, and it is election season. Good, fun stuff. Just in time for Thanksgiving. Thank God that'll be over before then. Those of you that are listening, I think we should talk about something healthy related to legislation and related to something that might inspire you to take action. One of those things that we talk about a lot is the sunsetting of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and that is approaching on January 1st, 2026. So many of you may not know what this is or even why this would matter to you. So let me frame that. You're sitting here listening and going, what in the world does the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act have anything to do with my Saturday as I'm listening to this, or if I'm listening to the podcast and running? Well, it might. Now, here's why. Let's say that you are a high earner or a wealthy family and you have wills. You have basic, simple wills, or maybe you even have some pretty advanced estate planning done, and you've put in credit shelter trusts or bypass trusts, and you think that you have everything kind of set correctly. Well, you may, but you may not. With this approaching expiration or sunsetting of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, there is a possibility that you may, for some of our listeners, be facing a estate tax issue. And I'm going to highlight a few as an example today and why this should matter to you. So right now, as it stands today, each individual has a current exemption amount for estate, gift, and generation skipping transfer tax of $13.61 million. That's quite a bit of money, okay? So I would say that I might have just lost about 90% of my listeners when I throw out that number, but that percentage goes up when I tell you that it's going to be basically cut almost in half when this sunsets, if it sunsets. So starting in 2026, the exemption levels per individual would be cut in half. Now let's think about this. Does that mean that you're safe if your portfolio is under that amount? Well, not necessarily. So let's talk about what the exemption is. So right back to the basics. The exemption from estate taxes is really what the government gives you to pass down to your next generation or to a trust without paying an estate tax, or basically a tariff to the government. Now, it's pretty big right now. It's $13.61 million, but it's going to go down almost in half, 7.8. So if you own a business, you own a ranch, maybe you have a large portfolio, the government is going to look at your total estate when you pass and when your spouse passes, and they are going to determine if an estate tax is due or not. And there are numerous ways to plan ahead for this through either gifting or advanced estate planning, creating things like family limited partnerships or irrevocable life insurance trusts. And there's a lot of things that you can do to plan ahead to transfer wealth out of your estate while you're living or when you pass in a tax efficient manner and get the money where you want it to go. We talk about this a lot on the show at the summit because those that are at the summit may have accumulated this kind of wealth. And so this may strike a chord with some of you that are business owners or ranch or landowners that have a large estate, and maybe you want to pass that down to the next generation. Maybe it's the family ranch, and a lot of memories are made there, core memories with your kids and your grandkids, and you're thinking, gosh, I'd really like to keep that in the family, but if the estate tax exemption levels go down, the generation 2 might have to sell off some of that property to pay the estate tax that's due. So what we do at Crestmont Private Wealth is we work on holistic plans, not just portfolios, holistic plans. That's everything from budgeting to cash flow to estate planning, portfolio management, scenario analysis, event planning, in terms of, hey, we've got this wedding coming up. We're not going to plan your wedding, but we'll plan for the expenditure for it. And life events happen. The one thing that we can all count on is we are all going to die. So pretty morbid. We can also count on taxes. So get educated on what is happening with this sunsetting of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Again, January 1st, 2026, as it stands, you're looking at effectively a cut in half of the exemption amount to pass wealth down to the next generation. Now, you do have unlimited spousal transfer. So let's say that I were to pass, I could pass basically my half of the estate in Texas over to my wife, unlimited. If it's $400 million, which it is not, or $400, it can all go to your spouse. That is what we call the honey, I love you will. That is something you do not want to do. Most people, not all people, but most people that have any kind of assets are going to want to visit with a board-certified estate planning attorney to create what's called marital trusts. So that way, if something happens to you, you can still take advantage of that unlimited transfer to your spouse. You can also take advantage of passing money down to generation 2 in a trust. It's called a testamentary trust, which is formed at your death, basically. But having those provisions in your will is key. That is kind of the most basic thing that you can do when you go get a will, is make sure that you're working with someone that understands this act and also understands your overall plan. Now, at Crestmont Private Wealth, we actually help our clients before they go to the attorney by providing them with a map of their estate plan. Every one of our clients has a holistic plan with us, and there's a section of our plan that shows where your money goes if you were to die prematurely or the second death. And a lot of times when we're visiting with folks, they may not realize, wow, that's a big check that's going down to generation 2. Or, oops, I didn't realize that the family ranch wasn't going to stay in the family because there's not enough cash or portfolio assets to pay the estate tax that's due because it's worth a lot more than the exemption levels after 2026. Those are the sort of things that we help solve in an objective, fiduciary way. We are not lawyers, so this is not legal advice. We will get you plugged in with really talented, board-certified estate planning attorneys that do this every day for a living. It's vital that you understand, if you happen to be a wealthy individual, what's going on with this sunsetting of this act. Now, let's talk a little bit about some things you can do right now if you happen to be of the giving type to your children. So this is something that could apply to you if you are in the wealthy demographic, the high earning demographic, or just the giving demographic. Here at Crestmont, we talk about the trailhead. You're just starting out on your life journey. You probably need a will. If you have any kind of assets, do it for your family, do it for your spouse, do it for your fiance. Have a will in place. Very, very important. On the Ascent, that's in your higher earning years. This becomes the more complicated phase of life. Here, absolutely, you need a will. Probably at this point, you're worried about guardianship. You're probably worried about, hey, who's going to take care of the kids if something happened to us? Do I have enough life insurance? All very important things. But you may not be thinking about your accumulating estate and thinking about, hey, what does this look like? And project it to the summit. And at that point, you get to the summit, you have enough portfolio assets to live off of. Maybe you've been wildly successful. At that point, that's usually when people start talking about more advanced estate planning techniques. But here's the problem with that. The problem with that is you only have so much time. And every year, as it stands today, you have $18,000 per individual to give per individual gift tax-free. So let's think about it like this. Let's say that I'm sitting here with Kristen, and she's not here today. She was on an earlier podcast. But let's say that we wanted to give $18,000 to our child's 529 plan. No problem. We can do that. And that 529 plan is a college funding account for those of you that don't know. It is technically out of your estate, even though you control it. So I could give $18,000, but so can Kristen. So that's $36,000 this year in 2024 that we could give without triggering a gift tax to one of our children. And for our other child, we could do the same thing. Doesn't mean you have to give the full 36. You could have sort of an incentive plan and be like, hey, you get good grades, you do all your chores, you do all your things, maybe you put $1,000 in that account. So why do I bring up this $18,000 per person per kid? Well, that's $36,000 in total if you're married to one kid. That money is going out of your estate. Let's say that you do own that ranch property we talked about, and maybe that ranch property is worth $30 million. And let's say your portfolio is worth $1 million of stocks, bonds, cash, etc. Well, there are techniques where you can still control that ranch, you can still own that ranch, and transfer bits and pieces of what's called a limited partnership unit of a family limited partnership that would own that ranch, which you control as the GP, and transfer with a discount. The IRS actually allows this after an appraisal. There's an allowable discount where you can squeeze the value of that ranch and transfer ownership interest, non-controlling ownership interest, every single year to Generation 2. So if you think about it, and you wait until you're 88 years old to take care of this, that's probably not ideal. And it's also probably not ideal to ignore these expiring exemption levels, because we're talking about $13.61 million per individual right now till the end of 2025, and those expire, and then they virtually get cut in half. If this has been of interest to you and you happen to be in that situation, maybe you have individual life insurance still in your estate and it's putting you over that estate tax limit. Maybe you do have that large business that's worth quite a bit. Maybe you have a large ranch. If you're hearing this today and this has intrigued you to learn more, and this has not been brought up to you before, look us up, Crestmont Private Wealth. We are at 604 South Main in Boerne and One River Way in Houston, Texas. We love to educate, empower clients, empower our listeners to just get better educated, to have financial literacy and solve problems. It's something we love to do. We have a heart to serve, and if this has been of interest to you, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at info@crestmontpw.com. Again, that email address is info@crestmontpw.com. Hope you have a great weekend, and God bless.